Earthbound is a terrible and awful game. Earthbound is one of the worst games I have played in history. Earthbound is even worse than Ocarina of Time. That game was terrible. For Earthbound, let's talk about the most important part of the game, the graphics. Look at these graphics. These graphics are terrible. Earthbound has terrible graphics. Earthbound has terrible and awful graphics. The graphics are terrible. Now, let's talk about the gameplay. The gameplay is really you have a special move, you have 5 other moves, and you can attack, use normal attack. It's just a ripoff of Final Fantasy and Pokemon, and that's basically what Earthbound is. It's a ripoff Pokemon because you're playing as a little kid, and the gameplay system is ripping off Final Fantasy. Now, let's talk about the story. The story is also a ripoff of Dragon Ball Z. And several other games you have to go to you have to do 8 certain things to do this, or you have to go to 8 sacred things to do something, or you have to do that's also a ripoff of Pokemon, or you have to go to 8 gyms and defeat the boss, or in Mario you have to do and this game is just a ripoff of Pokemon, and this game, like Yokai Watch, are a ripoff of Pokemon. Pokemon came first. But now let's talk about the characters. Ness is one of the most terrible characters in all of fiction. He is even worse than Sugo no Oboki from Sword Art Online. He's even worse than Frost from Dragon Ball Super. He's even worse than Zaxxerbat Jr. from Normal Heroes. He's even worse than Navi the Fairy. And he's even worse than freaking Bubsy. Ness is one of the most one-dimensional characters in history. He has no personality. He has... Which, most RPGs, the characters must have a personality to make the game interesting. Oh, but what about the other characters? No. The other characters are not really that funny. The reason why people, or I would say, is making this game is funny is because all the references were probably 90s trends that they were like, oh my god, it's a thing that you do, my friend kept spraying around school, ha 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 ha. It's not funny. It's not funny. And we'll talk about the character. We have the generic girl character, we have the generic scientist guy, and we have the generic fighter. Which is a ripoff he's a ripoff of Goku, she's a ripoff of Sakura from Naruto, and he is a ripoff of Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory. And but how can they be ripoffs? But they have no personalities anyway, so why should we care if they're ripoffs? Because they don't have any. The characters show no emotion. Even the main character shows no emotion. That's why Murphy, even though it's still a bad game, it's still better than Earthbound, because at least the character show emotion. Like, you look at Chrono Trigger. The character is so emotion, while and even Undertale, the characters show more emotion than the one-dimensional characters of Earthbound. Pokemon is a generic bad, good guy turned bad, and the villain is a generic monster, and Earthbound is one of the most overrated games ever invented. It's one of the worst games ever invented. If you say it, but there's one game that's still worse than Earthbound, and that's Undertale. Undertale is Earthbound's terribleness and multiplied by 10. I'm not gonna explain how bad Undertale is, because that game, at least Earthbound, because compared to the two fan bases of Earthbound and Undertale, Earthbound's fan base is tame compared to Undertale's fan base. Undertale fan base is a full bunch of weeaboos who only care about themselves. And now, Earthbound is just one of the worst games I have played. It's even worse than Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time was a boring game, and it wasn't really interesting. But Earthbound is even worse. I give Earthbound a negative 10 out of 10. A negative. Not a positive, a negative. Because Earthbound is terrible. And Nintendo also not release this on the virtual console because only the Earthbound fans bought this. Yep, that's right. Only the small fan base wanted this game. Nobody buy this. Nobody buy the game. Like when it came out on the Wii U, it didn't increase Wii U sales. Nobody went to go buy a Wii U for Earthbound. And that's the reason why nobody likes Earthbound, and it sucks. But the worst part of the game is that instead of all the classics they had to choose for the Super Nintendo lineup, they had to put Earthbound. They're trying to cater towards a small niche audience as much as possible. It's like nobody buys Nintendo. This is why people are not buying Nintendo products these days, because Paper Mario Color Splash appeals towards the niche audience. Metroid Prime Federation Force appeals towards the niche audience. Earthbound appeals towards the niche audience. #FE or whatever that game is. Fire Emblem games are popular now, but that version of Fire Emblem appeals to a niche audience. Earthbound is a crappy, niche, realistic game that doesn't deserve to exist.